LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0845 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Morning, Chip. 6 minutes after 8 on Wednesday, April the 16th. And in keeping with trying to provide as many news-breaking interviews as we can, let's get straight to our next conversation. It's your opportunity to put your calls and questions to Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, who is in the studio with me. And as I recall, Sir Bernard, good to see you again, by the way. So, as I recall, quite soon after you came to post, you came and gave an interview and took calls here. I've worked out you're about halfway through your 5-year term. Before we start taking the calls, has it all gone to plan? Are you still enjoying it?
Well, first of all, good morning, Nick. It's nice to be back, and thanks for the opportunity. Just to be clear, I'm halfway through my contract.
Yes.
I keep saying to people I'll stay for up to 7 years. They may get rid of me tomorrow. That's someone else's choice. But I'd like to stay for as long as they'll have me. But I think up to 7. But after 2.5 years, I'm very satisfied with where we are. We're having our challenges, as you will have seen in the press. Much of it is legacy, things that we're having to deal with from the past, as many organisations are. But I am proud of what we're doing. I mean, if you compare the last 3 years to the previous 3 years, then murders are down by about 25%. Young people's murders by a third, half the number of shootings, and about a third less stabbings. Now, stats can tell you anything, but these are very significant things, and people worry about the accuracy of crime stats. But these are things I think are hard to fudge. These are not marginal shifts. We are losing money, and yet we're managing to get the same number of police officers. We're just recruiting again. And we're saving £600 million, and yet we're producing this sort of performance, and we're keeping the same number of officers. So I'm proud of the people I lead. I think there's some good people doing some difficult jobs. And I think the people of London respect them, and I think all the surveys tell us they have confidence in them, despite some of the things that you never know, some of your callers may ask me about.
We're about to find out. Just lastly on this, Commissioner, if you could rewind the clock 18 months back, what might you do differently and why?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure.
That's why I'm sitting here. You're not bad at putting questions in your job as well, but you can answer this one.
I think it deserves a bit of reflection. What would I do differently and why?
Do you want to come back to it?
Yeah, I think it deserves a straight answer. I've always done my best to give you a straight answer. I think there's no doubt that it would have been better had Plebgate not happened in the way that it has, and you always reflect, could I have done something differently, could we have? So it would have been better had that not happened, because I think that's left an unfortunate legacy for us to deal with, and that also a relationship with politicians that's not helpful. We've got the hacking inquiry that's ongoing, which isn't helping our relationship with journalists, so we've got something to manage there. But I think on the whole we've got the right direction, and the organisation said we need to transform, and we're in the process of doing that. We've got to cut costs, we've got to cut crime, and we are doing, and we've got to change culture. We've got to continue to develop the way we are.
It's interesting you mentioned Plebgate, because you were supportive initially of your officers there. I have to put it to you, you must regret that now, because there's one officer in jail. The Police Federation have lost 2 senior members who stood down. What has it done for your credibility that you initially supported those police?
Well, I'd hope it's not made it... I hope I'm not less credible. I think at the time, as I've tried to explain to people, when I made the comment, I didn't have the information we had later that year in November, December. What we discovered later was that there'd been some misbehaviour by officers, and one, as you say, is now in prison for a year. But I didn't know that then. All I knew was that the allegation had been about Mr Mitchell's behaviour. Mr Mitchell had apologised for some of that behaviour, and he'd resigned. And it was in that context I said that I supported my officers. I've got to lead them, and they have to have somebody who's their ambassador and advocate at times. But when we later discovered the information that we're now discussing, and the fact that these officers had to be investigated, then, of course, I said we'd have a ruthless investigation, and I think we can show we have. 1 in prison. There are another 4 who are going to go through gross misconduct proceedings, and I can't say much more about that. So I think we can show we've reacted in an independent, objective and thorough, ruthless way.
But your credibility is still intact, Commissioner?
I believe so.
All right.
But it's for others to say, of course, Nick.
Of course. Take the calls. If you put your headphones on, we can connect you. Make sure that you can hear Terry in Finchley. You're through to Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning.
Good morning, Terry.
Morning. I've got a question. Do you think it's right for the police to investigate the police in complaints, police complaints?
I think the first answer is that the complete police complaints process is supervised by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. And you can either complain directly to them as a member of the public, and in some cases they will actually carry out the investigation in the most serious of allegations. It's not easy for them to carry out all of it because they don't have the resources. The Home Office has just agreed to give them more resources, and I suspect we'll therefore see them taking on more investigations, but I doubt they'll take on all of them. Many of the complaints we receive are similar to the ones you might make in a shop about quality of service. Was the officer helpful? Were they discourteous? Did they come back when they said they'd do something? So I think it might be wise to leave that type of complaint with the police because it's a managerial issue. I think where there is an allegation of dishonesty, violence, these are serious matters, and you expect independent supervision, and that's what the IPCC gives. Not everybody's always reassured by that, but I do know that it is a thorough process.
Terry, let's get you back in. I sense, it's Nick Ferrari here, by the way. Terry, I sense from the way you've put your question, you have issues. If they are, explain them and give me your response to what you've heard from the Commissioner. Right.
I've been harassed on numerous occasions by police, Hertfordshire Constabulary actually, and any time I've ever tried to make a complaint to professional standards at Hertfordshire or the police, I've always been palmed off with a local resolution. They're desperate to get you to
define harassment, Terry. What do you mean by harassment?
Harassment.
In a sentence, what do you mean? They come round, they knock you up in the middle of the night. What you tell them? Just so that my listeners get a sense of what's going on, Terry.
Right, for example...
I mean, if you're a villain, by the way, I don't know what you do, but I hope you would be harassed. I'd be delighted. I'd like to see more police harassment if you go around nicking cars or beating people up. So why don't you quickly tell me what it's all focused on?
Right. Well, my mum had an issue with the housing department, and one of the housing officers said that I phoned up and swore at the housing officer on the phone, which is ridiculous because anyone knows with any sense. If you swear at an housing officer or someone like that, they're going to put the phone down. They're not going to entertain you.
I see.
And so when they came round to my mum's premises, they said that they needed a police officer to go with them. And, apparently the police... I mean, this is another question I wanted to ask.
Go on then, last question.
Does a police officer have to log when they go round to someone's house because they've been called out, they've obviously been told to attend the premises because there could be trouble.
Well, let's ask Sir Bernard that. Terry, thank you for calling. We're going into an area. Remember, Sir Bernard's not responsible for Hertfordshire Police, and it's coming very much a he said, she said. So, briefly, do police officers log everything they do? Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, they do.
They should. We have a command and control computer, which when somebody makes a call, we record the telephone call. I'm sure Hertfordshire do the same. Then a record gets made on a computer. And the officer should make a record of an attendance. Without knowing all the details of Terry's complaint, it's a bit difficult to be sure.
Let's just come... Thank you, Terry, and I hope it resolves itself in regards to your mum. Might this change with the idea of these body cameras? How effectively how will these effectively work? Are they on all the time, or does the officer switch it on?
First of all, we're rolling that out at the end of this month, beginning of next month, about 600 cameras, and that's in 9 of our boroughs, and also in the firearms unit. It will be worn all the time. We're going to experiment, essentially, first of all, with it being off but turned on when it's needed.
Yes. Because
the problem we have is, but I think people might understand this, if we're in the street, we meet a member of the public, do you have to warn them you're being recorded? You just meet a mother with a child? Is that the sort of approach we want from a police officer? I'm not sure we do. There is a danger. If we
so that they are on all the time? Sorry, Commissioner, or they're not?
They are going to be worn all the time.
Yes, but
initially they're not going to be on all the time. We're going to experiment with it being off and turned on when they're needed.
And the officer would have to say, Mr. Ferrari, I should warn you now, I'm switching on my camera. Or
yes, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, if this is someone who actually, if I came up to you in the street and said, morning, Nick, by the way, we've been recorded, that's not the best start to a conversation if we've never met, I think. It might be a child. There's various reasons why I think we have to be careful about this. Of course, if it's a suspect, we need to warn them that we're going to record the conversation because we give them a caution and that what they say may be used in evidence.
So that will be inserted in the warning that you're given, and this is being recorded or something. Yeah.
The biggest danger, if we don't have it on all the time, is we forget to turn it on or choose not to turn it on about something later. Someone says, well, why didn't you turn it on? It's very convenient you forgot to turn it on.
Well, I can hear barristers, I can hear now smart barristers in court putting it to your men and women. Why didn't you put your camera on, detective and your officer?
Of course. So that's the risk. I say that's the risk, that's the thing we've got to work our way through.
What do you hope it will achieve, Sir Bernard?
I think, first of all, it's transparency. So one of the reasons that we're considering, or we're actually implementing this, is remember the shooting of Mark Duggan.
Yes.
There's an awful lot of dispute afterwards about, did Mark Duggan get out of the vehicle with a gun?
Yes.
Did he have the gun in his hand when he was shot? And what you had to rely on eyewitness accounts of people who would, at the end of the day, they had some shock in the event. So nobody was absolutely clear what happened. The jury found, of course, that Mark Duggan didn't have the gun in his hand at the time of shooting, but did have the gun in his hand when he got out of the taxi. So it seems to us that if we're able to get the best evidence possible, a camera will help us to achieve best evidence.
And if I'm part of the firearms unit, my camera's on all the time, is it?
That's right. Well, if you were going to an incident, you would know. So when we deploy our firearms officers, they may have their firearms with them, but if we send our armed response vehicles, they're being deployed to an armed incident or to someone with a knife. So as they attend, they've got a chance to turn it on, get themselves ready with the firearms. That is part of their procedure. But, an officer's patrolling on the street, something happens in front of them, somebody attacks them, is the first thing you do turn the camera on, but the first chance is you're going to defend yourself.
Yes.
So we've got all that to work through, which is why we're piloting it rather than rolling it out for 32,000 police.
It is your calls. I'm sorry I've taken too much time. There will be your calls to Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe right after our news headlines.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0845 6060 973.
Do you remember that summer and that safari? I'll never forget.
Memories are important. That's why when you buy a new Mac, we'll provide the equipment and training you need to keep yours safe from just £49. Visit your local Apple Premium reseller at Square at Selfridges, Stormfront in Wimbledon, Romford and Epsom, or search online at myapr.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply. Selected stores only. Ask in-store for details.
PPI, one question. Why have you still not checked out if you're due a refund? All Fast Track Reclaim needs is the name of your bank. No paperwork, no account numbers. We can still check PPI on every credit card, loan and mortgage you've ever had. Don't miss out. Find out now if you're owed thousands. Text YES to 82727. That's YES to 82727.
Is your company thinking of moving office? If so, this could be the perfect opportunity to revolutionise your business, transform your workplace and inspire your staff. Speak to Maris Interiors, who've been designing and fitting out workplaces for over 3 decades. Book your free consultation, attend a free seminar, or get your free guidebook. Go to officerelocation.co.uk. Maris. Workplace Design Experts.
LBC News headlines, Lisa Aziz.
Almost 1 million people in the UK used a charity's food banks for emergency supplies in the past year, a rise of 163% on the previous 12 months. South Korean authorities now say around 300 people are still unaccounted for and at least 2 dead after a ferry sank off the country's southwest coast. Tesco has reported a fall in annual profits for the second year running, down 6% to £3.3 billion. The FTSE 100 has reopened at 65.41. This is LBC. Your travel news is next.
I just want to talk about this Haribo Star Mix Sweeties. I like the hearts because they make me feel love. And also I like the rings. And the gold bears. Because it looks like it's a ring when they go swimming so they don't drown. And then look, you can make a big sandwich.
I'm Andy McCall in the LBC Travel Centre. M25 in Surrey, still blocked clockwise. Clackett Lane services round to junction 6 at Godstone. It was after a car caught fire earlier in the roadworks. The congestion is still backing towards junction 4 to Orpington. In the West Midlands, bit of a chopping, changing situation on the M42 going south. Junctions 4 to 3, that's Shirley and Dorridge towards the M40. 2 lanes are closed after an accident. There was 3 lanes shut earlier on, and the lane is still backing towards junction 6 at Birmingham Airport. But the lane closures keep changing, but still looking at some really substantial delays. Wolverhampton and Goldthorne Hill, that's shut between Ward Road and Ednam Road after a serious accident. Delays continue on the A50 in Staffordshire going east from Blythe Bridge towards the Little Chef in Uttoxeter was after an accident earlier on. County Durham and the A66 east of Darlington, that's still shut between the A66 and the Great Burton roundabout. It's where an oil tanker has overturned. Scottish Borders and the A699, that's shut between St Boswell's at the A68 and the A7 at Selkirk after an accident. Keeping you moving, next travel updates is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With Go-To Meeting, pointing you towards a better work-life balance.
This is Max. Long hours and a tough drive from work meant he always missed bath time with his kids. Now he's making up for lost time because he's discovered online meetings using GoToMeeting by Citrix. Now he can steer business meetings from home and forget about sitting in rush hour traffic. Go Max! You let GoToMeeting point you to a world of bubble bath beards and shampoo Mohicans. Improve your work-life balance with online meetings. Start your free 30-day trial. Visit gotomeeting.co.uk. Go you!
Here we go, the annual pilgrimage to the airport. Half a dozen suitcases, squeezing onto a packed train, checking the kids aren't left behind as the doors slam shut.
That's no way to start a holiday.
Get a Greyhound car straight to the airport or station. Book now and save 10%. Download our free mobile app, see greyhoundcars.co.uk or call 020 3388 3388. Greyhound Cars, running all over London, all day, every day.
Temper. A mattress so supportive, so comfortable. All you'll feel is weightless. Take the Temper Challenge to find your perfect mattress and receive your free travel pillow worth £60. No purchase necessary. For details, visit temper.com today. Terms and conditions apply.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
22 after 8. Let's get those questions into the Commissioner. That's what it's all about. Michael's in Chiswick. You're through to Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning,
Hello.
Sir Bernard.
Good morning, Michael.
Yeah, my question to you is you claim to be committed to tackling endemic corruption within the police. Are you simply paying lip service when internally your organisation hounds whistleblowers like James Patrick, who exposed the crime report fiddling?
I don't think that's fair, Michael. I think, first of all, we are committed to rooting out corruption, and we have many officers whose only job is to look for corrupt officers, and they're pretty good at it. We don't have many, but where they are, then I'm determined, as police officers are determined, is to get rid of corrupt or violent or dishonest police officers. So we do an awful lot on that. I think in terms of PC Patrick, who's now, as you know, has announced his resignation, the misconduct hearing which he went through was about something that happened before his whistleblowing. And what we are doing is I've asked Her Majesty the Inspector to look at our crime recording processes, and we expect in May to hear whether or not they think James Patrick's allegations are true or not. So I don't think we've hounded him. And finally, just in terms of the objectivity of it, I thought it was important that the Met didn't look at his potential misconduct. That was reviewed by a senior officer from another force, and his misconduct panel was also chaired by somebody from another force. So we tried to exclude the Met from that process so that we weren't involved in a dispute with one of our own officers who appears to criticise us.
Back to you in a second, Michael. Just to remind my listeners, PC Patrick, of course, was the whistleblower who told a panel of MPs that massaging figures to hit performance targets was, in his words, an ingrained part of policing culture. He claimed serious offences such as rape and child sex abuse were recorded as crime-related incidents or no crimes. And initially, the Commissioner said there perhaps was a grain of truth to some of what he said. Back to you, Michael.
Yeah, yes, Commissioner Hogan. I mean, I met you at the Home Affairs Select Committee, one of the inquiries into sort of police corruption and standards. And I asked you if I could meet you for some time to explain to you about police corruption. I'm not sure if you, at the head of the Metropolitan Police, are actually aware of what's going on the ground. I mean, the paper reports this week were about Alan Gibson, the head of your Professional Standards Department, trying to suppress what James Patrick was saying.
Right, Michael, I'm not sure what exactly...
Do you recall meeting Michael?
I can't offhand. I'm sure I may have, but I'm not sure that...
We shook hands.
Well, you might accept, Michael, I shake hands with a lot of people who offer themselves to me, and if we don't meet again, it's difficult to recall always. I think the only thing I can say is we are taking these allegations seriously. I've asked the Inspectorate of Policing to come in and look at it. They're in the process of doing that, and perhaps we all should reserve judgment until they've got to the bottom of that. Now, the Deputy Mayor for Policing has also asked their auditors to have a look at the figures, and at the end of that, we'll be in a better position. I would think what I was saying, as Nick reminded me, was that, of course, none of our figures are perfect. We know that. We know that not all crimes reported. In terms of rape, it is thought that 85% of rape is never even reported, let alone recorded. So the stats never tell us everything, and errors are made. I think at the last account, the Home Office guidance was about 670 pages. It's entirely possible we make mistakes. I think what we have to establish is, do we have an organisation, a culture that intends to make those mistakes, or is it dishonestly fiddling the figures? I don't believe we have, but I think it's best, rather than me make that judgment, we get someone independently to.
Lastly, David Winnick, the MP, asked if there should be an inquiry into the Met, that panel of MPs. Do you agree with this idea?
No, I mean, although the Home Affairs Select Committee had, in my view, probably had decided before I appeared, and certainly by the end of my appearance had decided that they would carry out an inquiry, and we'll do everything we can to support that inquiry. They weren't clear on what grounds they were making that decision.
Did they give you a fair hearing then when you say that they'd already decided?
Well, it's not for me to judge whether they give me a fair hearing.
You must have a sense of it, Sir Bernard.
I think they had a certain agenda when they arrived in the room, and probably so did I. But I think the big thing, the only thing I would say is that we will cooperate with the inquiry. It's not clear exactly what it's intended to address. But of course, one of the things that they challenged us about was the Met too big. Well, it is a big organisation, and London is. So I can't understand how we're going to separate parts of London off and say we'll have another police force. But I'm sure that's something they'll address in their inquiry to follow.
Barry's in Chingford. You're on the radio, Barry. Go ahead.
Good morning, Sir Bernard.
Good morning, Barry.
Sir Bernard, every time I see photos of you, you look absolutely immaculate in your uniform. And when I was a younger man, every police officer from the lowest rank upwards looked equally as smart as you did. But my issue is these awful, ill-fitting, high-visibility jackets. They look like a bunch of construction workers. And those stab-proof vests, what on earth are they doing? Why aren't they tailored to fit? I mean, it's like they borrowed them from someone. I mean, are they one size or
You're not offering to make them, Barry, because you've made a very compelling case, Sir Bernard.
Barry, I'm going to have to agree with you, I'm afraid. First of all, we are doing something to improve the high-vis, because I've worked in other parts of the country where they've been better. But I think in the past we've not spent enough money on them. We've pared back and I think made the wrong decision.
What are you doing then? What's happening with the high-vis jackets?
We're just in the process of trying to get a better one, and we are rolling those out. So it may be where Barry's seen them, they haven't all rolled out yet.
What way better? Tailored or...?
Yeah, and also just better quality. I mean, different parts of the country have had a better quality and better padding. Now, you may say we need no more padding, but what it means is that they look the part better. So we are trying to improve the kit. In terms of body armour, you wouldn't believe it, Barry, but I think it is tailored. It's certainly fitted to a certain standard. But I'm afraid whenever you've worn body armour, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to wear body armour, it's pretty uncomfortable and it's not very complimentary to many figures. So I'd have to accept both challenges, but we are trying to improve the way we look. And finally, regardless of what we give people in kit, they ought to wear it properly. So they should wear the hat. They should wear their kit smartly, and they should keep it clean. So I'm afraid for me that's a professional standard we should all maintain.
Do you ever upbraid officers that you come across?
I upbraid supervisors more than I do officers, because they're the ones who are paid to do the job that I expect them to do, which is to challenge people about standards.
And why is it important a copper looks smart, Sir Bernard?
I think two reasons. As Barry said, if people look the part, it gives you a good start. If you then don't deliver, then you've got a problem. But I think if you arrive as a professional, looking unkempt, looking like you don't care, looking like you're not very thorough, then there's a fair chance that's what you are. And I think police officers in this country have got some very high standards. We deal with people reasonably, we listen to their concerns, and where we have to, we exercise force reasonably. So part of that is about looking the part, and I expect high standards. And I tell you, while I remain charging the Met, what you won't find is that we have T-shirts. He said obsessively, but I don't agree with it. So I'm afraid for me, how you look does matter.
All right. Mick's on the Isle of Dogs. Go ahead, Mick.
Morning, Nick. Morning, Sir Bernard.
Morning, Mick.
This is not a thing. I'm not going to run the police service down. I just want to know a couple of things. I mean, I've got no reason to like the police, but I would not do their jobs for the simple reason what you're just talking about, the stab vest. I don't see why a bloke's got to get up, go out, do his job, and wear one of them. But my point is this. I'm an old thief, old villain, whatever you want to call me. But I've been straight for 20 years. But when I moved up north, the attitude of the police up north is totally different to the Met.
In what way?
I got pulled a couple of times up there because of the work we was involved in. And as soon as they heard the voice from London, when they used to, I don't know if they still do it, but they CRO you. And when my record come back, I mean, they was a little bit funny, but they was friendly. They didn't try and make you out that you were still doing what you'd done years ago.
And what happens in the Met, briefly, Mick?
I was driving along with a fella. He got stopped. As soon as they CRO'd me, they went, "Are you standing next to him?" Blah, blah, blah. He's extremely violent. This, that and the other. Known to use firearms. And the old attitude of the officers who pulled us changed.
And one of you had used firearms in the past, just to make this clear?
This was 30-odd years ago.
OK, but you had used firearms. Sir Bernard?
Well, I understand what you're saying, Mick. I mean, it's difficult to draw conclusions from one or two experiences. I mean, my experience, having worked in the north and being from the north and being in the south, I think broadly officers try and be similar in both areas. There's no doubt if you get information that somebody's got previous convictions, it modifies your attitude. You're more suspicious, to be honest. Even then, though, I would expect people, whether somebody's got a criminal background or not, to be treated reasonably and professionally. I don't expect people to be arrogant or anything. But you can put them on guard in a way that is what you have experienced, I suspect.
But Bernard, if you'd used a gun, you can hardly be surprised that coppers are going to be a little bit wary of you.
Yeah, I know that, Nick. We spoke about this years ago.
Did we? Yes. Are you the one who went into banks with guns a lot?
Yes.
Well,
I
Mick,
remember...
I have to say that I think in the north you were pretty generous, actually.
Yeah, but, I mean, that was a long while ago. I mean, I've been straight. I know it's a stigma you'll never get rid of.
Yeah.
It was just the attitude of the officers, especially in Staffordshire. And they went, Cockney accent, this, that and the other, blah, blah, blah. But when it come back on the radio, what I've been done for...
Yeah, using guns.
They did change a little, but they were still friendly.
I mean, I agree with you, Mick. I think regardless of someone's past, we ought to try and treat people reasonably professionally. Yes. But I can understand, I think we all probably... I think you're saying you can understand that there's an initial reaction when you find out somebody's got a significant criminal past and you are trying to work out... I don't know the reason you were stopped, but you put on guard is my only point. But even then, I'd expect you to be treated reasonably.
All right, we leave it at that. Last question before we go to the news. Sir Bernard, are Northern coppers more friendly?
Well, I would say, of course. No, I honestly don't think... I mean, it's like saying to say, are people in the north more friendly than people in London? That's not been my experience. I think what you get in London is a real challenge, which is, first of all, life's so busy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you go into a shop to buy a newspaper, there's 10 people behind you in a queue.
Yes.
You go into a shop in the north, it might be you and the shopkeeper. You have a chat. Good morning. That's not them more friendly. They've got more time to be friendly. So it seems to me that's the big thing I've noticed down here, is not that the people are less friendly, but the pace of life means that they haven't got that few seconds to just be human and do the things that, in one sense, are a waste of time, but in another sense, make a day, don't they?
The pace of life moves on. We're late to the news. More calls coming up, of course, to Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe after the LBC News here at 8:33.
The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, told LBC the Plebgate scandal has left an unfortunate legacy.
You always reflect, could I have done something differently? Could we have? So it would be better had that not happen, because I think that's left an unfortunate legacy for us to deal with, and that also a relationship with politicians that's not helpful.
Sir Bernard also told Nick he hopes his credibility hasn't been damaged by the row. A report's claiming almost 1 million people in the UK have turned to a food bank for emergency supplies in the past year. The figures from the Trussell Trust come as more than 600 church leaders have written a letter calling for MPs to do more to tackle food poverty. Around 300 people are said to be still missing after a ferry sank off South Korea's southern coast. At least 2 people have died. Hundreds of those on board were high school students on a school trip. Tens of thousands of children in England are expected to miss out on a place at their first choice of primary school this year. Families across the country are finding out this morning where their child will go in September. At 8:15, the FTSE was up 47 at 65.88. And LBC weather, a cold start for London and the South East, then dry though with long sunny spells. Highs today of 15 degrees, remaining fine, dry and bright in the south of the UK. Cloud and outbreaks of patchy rain will move southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England. LBC News Time, it's 8:34.
The all-day breakfast, only served till midday. The bottomless coffee, only includes 1 refill. Some broadband packages are like that. They say they're unlimited, but leave you wanting more. TalkTalk is different. Our broadband packages start from just £3.50 a month, plus £15.95 line rental. And they're 100% totally unlimited. No download limits, no caps, and we'll never slow you down. From For our best deals, visit talktalk.co.uk/April. A brighter home for everyone. Contract and £30 connection fee applies.
Dad had a nasty car accident when we were on holiday abroad. It's not been easy for Mum.
Hey, things are looking up. We got the best advice to help us all get through this. That's why I'm with Irwin Mitchell Solicitors.
If you or your family have suffered an injury abroad, you need the best possible advice, rehabilitation and support to get your lives back on track. Call us on 08000 325 325 or visit irwinmitchell.com to see how we can help you.
Stand by.
We're authorised and regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority.
Shell V-Power Nitro Plus unleaded and diesel performance fuels are the only fuels inspired by our technical partnership with Ferrari. They're designed with our unique double-action formula to actively clean and protect vital engine parts. So you're not just filling up with over 60 years of Shell and Ferrari technology and innovation, you're also filling up with... Fill up with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus performance fuels today.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0845 6060 973.
It's 8:36 and it's your calls to the Commissioner, Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. Matt is in Ewell and you're through to Sir Bernard. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, hello, Sir Bernard.
Good morning, Matt.
I'm a taxi driver, hiya. And I work nights, and every night I see lines and lines of minicabs outside every nightclub venue throughout the West End, etc. And also as well, a lot of these drivers, they're not actually with a private hire operator. They actually, what they do, they bung the clipboard Johnny outside the club, say, I don't know, 20 or 30 pounds, and then they can work it every night. I mean, recently we had Chris Hume's daughter on the front page of the Standard who was attacked by one. And, I mean...
moving you to your question, if I may, Matt, what is your question of the Commissioner?
Don't you find that also there's 20 sexual assaults approximately a week for these minicabs? Don't you think that's shameful and embarrassing to the Metropolitan Police that you represent?
Well, I think the first thing is, I'm not sure about the 20 a week, Matt. Where you get those figures from, I'm not sure. But in terms of the fact any assault is bad, so I accept that. You will know that we do carry out quite a few operations together with the licensing authorities, because we are no longer, the Met is no longer the licensing authority. So the local authorities, in this case Westminster, have a taxi unit who go out and check on licensing conditions. And we have operations from time to time which target that. So I think it's every couple of months, you have a big operation and go and try and catch them. I also know that patrolling officers in Westminster take a great interest in this group of people and do their best to disrupt the touts and arrest people or get prosecutions where there is unlicensed taxiing. So it is important we do take action against these people, but we share the responsibility with the licensing authority.
Quick response from you, Matt. Quick response.
Sorry, I mean, don't you need to do a better job? Because at the present time, sorry,
it's all right.
It's just got out of control. It's absolutely terrible out there.
Well, first of all, as a result of what you said, I will ask, actually, and I'll go and have a look, because I've not been out of Westminster for a few months, so I'll go and have a look. But I think the other thing is that, it's always been a problem. The West End particularly, there's often not enough taxis for the number of people around, so the demand is there. And meeting that demand, there's always been a competition between hackneys and private hire. That's been there as long as I've been in the job, in every city I've worked in. So, and it's often the complaint of the hackney cabs that in fact the others are less regulated and both complain about each other. So it's a chronic problem. But if you say it's getting a lot worse, then I'll go and have a look and I'll ask the commander there.
Action this day. We'll, I'm sure, hear back from one of the Commissioner's teams on how it goes. Let's just feed in some of the questions coming from the emails, texts and the tweets. We'll come back to calls in just a second. Maureen in Woodford. Are the police who were involved and seemed to fail in the Cyril Smith case years ago need to be investigated?
Well, this is something that happened in the Northwest, I think, predominantly. The main reports I've seen are in the press, so I know nothing else, really. So I'm sure what will happen is that the Northwest, I think it's Greater Manchester Police area, although it wasn't
Rochdale,
Greater...
wasn't it?
It was, although I don't think it was Greater Manchester Police then. Greater Manchester Police will be created in 1974, right. And I'm not sure when these allegations are around. So you're right, it was Rochdale. So I'm sure that people will have a look, but for what I see, it looks as though the police did investigate, but there is an allegation that the investigation was stopped higher up the chain. I'm sure somebody is in the process of looking at that, although as we've found, these historical events are quite hard to investigate.
Had you ever heard anything about Cyril Smith?
No.
Jags in Southall. The police in Ealing are doing a great job. However, there seems to be a constant level of inexperienced officers in areas who have little knowledge of the ground they're covering. Do you feel we're losing local knowledge again after years of investment in neighbourhood teams, as officers are focusing more on career than community?
I don't take sides with Jags. I mean, I'm sorry if that's your experience locally, but we are just recruiting again, which means that, over the next 6 months, I think we're going to take about 700 or 900 officers in. So I think the great joy of that is you're going to get new people. Young, generally, not always. Less experienced, I accept. But you've got an energy and a vibrancy that I think you will appreciate. We do try and keep our neighbourhood officers in place as long as possible. And because we've changed the model over the last year, it's possible there's been a turnover of people. But generally, we've got inspectors now in the neighbourhoods. We've got officers who do stay there together with CSOs who play a vital part of a neighbourhood team. So I'd hope that you find that the good people who are prepared to stay there. We do probably get more turnover than I would like. Officers do, for their own reasons, want to go on and become a detective, want to work in traffic. I think we'd all understand people want to develop a career. But on the whole, people in neighbourhoods do want to stay there.
One more, James, you're going to be the next caller. Let's put one more email in. This is Rachel in Bexley. Nick Ferrari has been talking about Peter Clark taking over investigation into possible Islamic extremism in schools in Birmingham. Is he the right man for the job?
I'm not going to comment on this particular issue directly because I don't know the facts. It's something
what do you need to know?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm just going to say that in terms of the allegations in the Birmingham schools, I don't know the facts. And it's a decision of the Education Secretary. I think Peter Clark has been made the Education Commissioner. The only thing I can say, that Peter Clark I know is a very thorough professional, very reasonable man. And whatever he does, I'm sure he'll do as well as he can, and I would trust his judgment. But, in terms of this particular appointment, I can't comment.
Yes, it's not been welcomed by the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, has it? I have huge admiration, but someone who's so closely associated with counter-terrorism, it could be misconstrued.
Yeah, I think the thing is, Nick, I've got so many issues that I have to comment on in London. I'm not going to start on West Midlands. I can only say that Peter Clark is an admirable professional, and whatever he's asked to do, I'm sure he will do well.
I did try. You mentioned James Patrick. I think he's called, if I've got this right, is this James Patrick on the line?
Yeah, morning.
Morning. You're through to the Commissioner. Go ahead.
Morning, boss.
Morning, James.
What I was going to ask you, sir, is are the Met going to be reviewing the way that you deal with whistleblowers in the future so that people don't have to go what I've been through?
We're always prepared to do that. Each case, as you will know, sadly through your experience, is not straightforward. So, of course, we're always prepared to look at that, and if there's anything you can offer us in that, we will, of course, we'll try and learn. It's a difficult balance to strike, obviously.
No, I completely appreciate that, and there is an awful lot, I think, which you could probably take on board from my experience. One thing that I was quite curious about, and seeing as I've got you on the phone for the first time, I will ask. After I'd been to the PASC and you'd appeared, I emailed and offered to meet with you and the Deputy Mayor. I was wondering why you never replied to that, because it left me a bit confused, to be honest.
I think we did reply. I'm not sure I replied, but the point we made was that, of course, as a commissioner, what I can't do is interfere in an ongoing discipline process, which is what you were involved in, sadly.
When I did email you, sir, I did say, set the discipline aside, let's talk about the...
No, but that's what I'm afraid, James, that's what you wanted to do, but it's not what I can do. So therefore, if I just finish, and then, by all means, come back. So that was not possible for me to separate the two. It is out of the way now, and it may be something we can look at now. But of course, I think it's public knowledge that you've given your resignation.
Yes, he's blogged on this, Commissioner.
Well, I've had no choice, really, have I, boss? I mean, these are things which are going to come out, and I don't want to talk about these on the radio with you. But I just felt.
You rang James. You say you don't want to talk about it on the radio. You've called in, so it's your choice.
I wanted to say to you that I felt very, very let down, in particular by the senior levels of the Met, and I wanted to take the opportunity to say that. Now, I missed your bit because I was having a cuddle with my kids, so I'll have a listen later on, and if I've got any thoughts on what you've said, I will, of course, express them in writing, as I'm sure you can imagine. But I sincerely hope that people who want to expose wrongdoing in the Met get a slightly less raw deal in the future, and that if you genuinely are willing to listen and willing to move on with it, then I genuinely wish you all the best with that.
OK, well, two things I'd only say, James. First of all, I'm sorry about your experience, because I'm sure that whatever's the rights and wrongs, you won't have enjoyed what you've gone through, nor your family. I think, secondly, I'm certainly happy to consider meeting if you would want to, now that the misconduct process is out of the way. And the only final thing, I hope you'd be prepared to accept as well that although you've got a very firm view about what you've seen and your experience, I have asked for some independent advice to find out whether your allegations are endemic or, in fact, your experience was a one-off. And at the end of that process, the inspectorate is looking at it. We'll both be better informed, I think, and hopefully at least you'll take that into consideration yourself, as much as I will have to.
I completely will. And like I said, I'd be welcome to have a meeting with you to talk this through, because I think there's been probably quite a lot in the way which has maybe interfered, I think, in what could have been quite a useful process. And I do think that some of the people that have been in charge of me have behaved in a way which is extremely questionable, and that would include the DPS.
All right, they're not here to defend themselves. Lastly, James, can I ask you, what are you going to miss about the Met?
What am I going to miss about the Met? I'm going to miss some of the really fantastic people of London that have made policing it such a genuine pleasure.
Look after yourself. More calls to the Commissioner after this.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0845 6060 973.
Many have debated whether banks have been doing enough to support businesses through lending. I'm joined by John Merriman of JMS Automation and Drives. So how's business been for the past few years?
This last few years has probably been as bad as it gets.
So how did you start getting your business moving again?
Barclays helped by extending some loan facilities and the mortgage holiday repayment periods, which was extremely useful. The easing of the outgoings was just tremendous. We've seen the light at the end of the tunnel.
If you're in business, visit barclays.co.uk/funding. Barclays, your business, your bank.
All lending products are subject to status and application. Security may be required.
Fine dining is truly a collaborative effort. At Madhu's Heathrow, discover a fusion of Indian and Kenyan cuisine, cooked on a traditional charcoal-fueled Rabata grill. From exotic Kenyan fish and authentic Punjabi sauces to lightly spiced and succulent Rabata chops, enjoy the sublime tastes of two continents. The award-winning Madhu's now at the Sheraton Skyline Hotel, London Heathrow. For a 10% discount, book at madhusheathrow.com and quote radio.
Upload your business video free to Ding Video, Britain's newest business video directory. Ding Video at dingvideo.com.
Let's get those LBC news headlines. Lisa Aziz.
Almost 1 million people in the UK used a charity's food banks for emergency supplies in the past year, a rise of 163% on the previous 12 months. 300 people are still missing after a ferry carrying 476, most of them high school students, sank off South Korea's southern coastline. Parents in England are finding out whether their child has got their preferred primary school place this morning. It's expected, though, 1 in 5 in some areas will miss out. The FTSE 100 is up 41 at 65.83. This is LBC. Your travel news is next.
You were born to be free, born to live life on the open A road, born to roll by Halfords, born to get 20% off all 5-litre engine oil until Easter Monday. And you were born to enter a prize draw to win one of 5 Range Rover Evokes when you buy any engine oil. Halfords. Keep on rolling. Terms and conditions apply. See halfords.com for competition details, because you were born to read those details.
If you're in mortgage arrears or already have a repossession order looming, it can seem like you've run out of options. But Property Rescue can help. Property Rescue could buy your home for cash and stop any repossession order in its tracks. A cash offer, an exchange within 48 hours, and even a cash advance if you need one. They even take care of standard legal fees. Speak to Property Rescue about selling your property fast. propertyrescue.co.uk. Sell fast with confidence.
Some things need limits. Road speeds, credit cards, time spent visiting the in-laws. And some things definitely don't. Like your broadband. With TalkTalk, you'll enjoy 100% totally unlimited broadband. No download limits, no caps. We'll never slow you down. And with packages from just £3.50 a month, plus £15.95 line rental, there really is nothing to stop you. For our best deals, search TalkTalk Unlimited. TalkTalk, a brighter home for everyone. Contract and £30 connection fee applies.
PPI, one question. Why have you still not checked out if you're due a refund? All Fast Track Reclaim needs is the name of your bank. No paperwork, no account numbers. We can still check PPI on every credit card, loan and mortgage you've ever had. Don't miss out. Find out now if you're owed thousands. Text YES to 82727. That's YES to 82727.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0845 6060 973.
Let's get more of your calls through to the Commissioner. Sally is in Cheshunt. You're on the radio. Sally, go ahead.
Oh, yes, good morning.
Good morning, Sally.
I wondered if you was going to just forget about the case of PC Keith Blakelock. I only see it a couple of times when it was at court, but then everything was on the television that the chap was found not guilty. I'm wondering, it was very, very dear to my heart what that policeman went through. I was visiting Tottenham at the time to see my mum, and I've just never forgotten it, and I just think that it's been brushed under the carpet.
Well, I think that Sally, first of all, I think the person I think about most is Elizabeth, Keith Blakelock's wife, who has had to suffer the original event, obviously the terrible murder of PC Blakelock, and then all the inquiries after that, and then most recently, obviously, the chap that we had been charged was found not guilty, and we accept that verdict. But you think for the emotional rollercoaster that she and the rest of Keith's family have been through, it's pretty awful, and of course Keith's colleagues who were with him at the time. So we're sad that obviously there's been no successful outcome, but as I say, the jury's made its verdict, and that's the end of it. But it's something that obviously I think for all that in Haringey has left a terrible and indelible mark, both the riot and the murder of Keith in the way that he was murdered. It was a terrible event, and tomorrow, sadly, is the 30th anniversary of the murder of Yvonne Fletcher. And I'll be at the scene of her murder together with a few colleagues, I'm sure quite a few colleagues, who will not forget. And that's how we feel about Keith Blakelock.
It shows what the men and women under your command do each and every day. Does this mean, as regards Keith Blakelock, that is effectively the case is closed now with the failure of this prosecution? Yeah, unless there is any further information, of course, we would always follow that up. And we never close a murder case which is where we haven't got a conviction. So we'll always be open to the fact there's more information. But there's nothing new for the killer or killers of Keith Blakelock inside. I think it's quite difficult in this case, given the amount of time that's passed, and various investigations have been made. So I think it's going to be difficult to move forward, but if new evidence came forward, we would pursue it. Sally, thank you for your call, and obviously all thoughts with Yvonne Fletcher's family tomorrow. Very sad anniversary there as well. Ed's in Hounslow. You're on the radio, Ed.
Good morning, Nick, and good morning, Bernard.
Good morning, Ed.
I'd like to raise with you a very serious subject. You'll be aware that, this is not a good time for the Metropolitan Police in so many respects, and particularly within certain ethnic groups. And you will be aware that in consequence of the racist murder of Stephen Lawrence many years ago, there was an investigation carried out by Lord Justice Macpherson and a report, and Lord Justice Macpherson was so appalled at the fact that people of colour were going to police with complaints and just being turned away and not listened to, that he instituted...
Let's move to a question, Ed, because I've got so many people, and move you quickly to the question if I could, Ed.
OK, well, he instituted protocols to which the Metropolitan Police are bound to adhere to. And yet, despite that, they are breaching those protocols blatantly, as is in the publicised case here in Hounslow of solicitor Taranjit Chana, who reported to Hounslow Police that she was the victim of a racially motivated hate crime, a report which they do not have the prerogative to gainsay without...
Ed, what is your question?
The question is, why is it that Hounslow Police are in dereliction of their duty and refusing to do the duty that they are supposed to be doing?
Hold on the line, Ed.
Well, if there's a case that,
Are you aware of this case, the solicitor?
I've not heard of it.
OK.
But if there's any case like that people have got a complaint about, then let me know, email me, or if the solicitor themselves emails me, we'll have a look. But of course, we'll have a look at all the circumstances. And Ed, you made a very clear statement about what you think's wrong, but we'd have to look at all the circumstances.
Ed, I want you to talk to one of the team now. Stay on the line. We will refer this across to the Commissioner or one of his team, and we will get back to you. It's a little unfair. He doesn't have... I'm afraid I don't have full knowledge of this case. So, Ed, we will get to the bottom of it, but I think we have to move on now. 8:55 the time. Richard's in Reading. You're on the radio, Richard. Go ahead.
Hello. The question that I wanted to ask is that historically there's always seemed to be a stigma regarding the recruitment process within the Metropolitan Police and also throughout the UK. And I wanted to ask the Commissioner what's being done not only to make the recruitment of different ethnic faiths more transparent, but also people who are gay or lesbian.
Okay. Well, Richard, I'm not sure I entirely accept that throughout the country it's got that stigma, but it's true that we need to be more representative, and I've made that very clear as part of our strategy as we want to be. At the moment, we're running at about 1 in 5 of our recruits is from a minority. It's a little harder to say in terms of LGBT community, the gay and the bisexual community, what representation there is, because people will not always declare. So I can't be as sure about that. But I think it's a far more open culture that we have. I think 30 years ago people weren't. I think many parts of society weren't open to sexual orientation difference. But I think we can say that, first of all, in terms of minorities, it's getting better. And certainly the Met has got the highest percentage of minorities compared to any force in the country, about 11%. Needs to be a lot better. But we're getting up to 1 in 5, and I'm hoping that we can make more progress in these coming years. In terms of our police staff, it's about 1 in 4 minorities. Our PCSOs, 1 in 3. And our special constables, again, 1 in 4. So I think we can show that we made huge progress over the last few years, but I'm afraid a lot more to make.
All right, thank you for that. You mentioned a question from me. We talked a little bit about your appearance before the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee, which is when you said you didn't know when, why, or on whose authority some database on corrupt officers was destroyed. And you were asked if you'd contacted either Lord Stevens or Lord Blair, who were Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner at the time. I don't think you had. Have you subsequently?
No, we haven't, because what we need to do is to establish the facts first.
And you need to speak to them to do that, Commissioner?
Well, not necessarily, no. I think the first thing is we need to establish the facts about the original allegation, and we're in the process of doing that. I think we've now interviewed 20 witnesses. We've got far more clarity about for example, if you remember, there was an allegation that there were lorry loads of shredding. We've now discovered we think that's about 4 bin bags loads. We initially were told this had happened in 2003. We now think it's happened in 2001. So what we discover in these things is gradually as you get more information, the story becomes clearer. Now, if it was me now, and somebody said, are you shredding documents in that department? I really would struggle to say what's happening. So at the point at which we need to talk to them, I'm sure someone will. But I was challenged...
Would that be you?
Well, not necessarily, no, because I think...
Wouldn't you want to ring your...
No, because... And I made this point to the Home Affairs Select Committee, which is that had I gone into that meeting and said, I've rung my predecessor and asked them what their view of the world is, they might say, were you trying to arrange a story? Were you trying to conspire with them about an inquiry that was ongoing? So whichever way we go, there's a risk of a criticism. But until we've established the facts, I have no intention of ringing them about this, leading to a position where I'm challenged about the propriety.
My listeners sitting in their cars and at their homes and their offices, you'd ring your predecessor and say, John, what the bloody hell went on back in 2000 and whenever?
The potential is that we've seen with this public inquiry, which is to come around undercover officers, that these, any one of my predecessors, I may one day be called as a witness. And if there's a witness to something, then it's quite proper we do that in a proper way. That's exactly what I intend to do. We're not going to rush it. We were criticised in the Mark Ellison review for having rushed an inquiry and not discovered material we should have. So I intend to do it properly, and I intend to do it carefully. And that doesn't mean a private telephone call with one of my predecessors about something that somebody says, what did you talk about? What were you trying to arrange?
Let's get a couple of emails if I can. This comes from Pierre in Dartford. Is it necessary now with the Times newspaper's revelations about Nigel Farage, the police investigate UKIP?
I'm not sure exactly what the allegations are, although I've seen something about expenses.
Yes.
So should the relevant authorities think a crime has been committed, I'm sure they will let us know.
OK. And lastly, Fiona in Clapham, with the collapse of the case against Nigel Evans, is too much money and time being spent on these alleged past offences?
I think we're trapped in a bit of a fix here. I think this country doesn't have, as some countries have, a bar on historical investigations or convictions. Just a time.
A lot of your men and women's time and money taken up with this, isn't there, Commissioner?
There is, but of course, whichever we do, we're going to be wrong. We were accused, as you know, historically, of ignoring people who came forward in the Jimmy Savile case, for example, a man who's now dead.
And possibly Cyril Smith.
So we apparently ignored them at the time. If they come forward now and they say, now you're ignoring me again, what are we to do? Are we to ignore them twice? I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we've got to investigate. I think there's no doubt that both the Crown Prosecution Service and ourselves are going to make probably a more rigorous test of the evidence, given it's such a long time ago.
And that's needed now, isn't it?
Well, I'm sure that it's something that all of us will look at in terms of these historical cases, but I already know that these cases are reviewed very seriously before a charge is contemplated.
All right.
And what you can never do, none of us can do, is predict the outcome of a jury.
Indeed. I'm afraid we pick up the outcome of this particular part of the show because it's over. Sir Bernard, come and see us again soon. Thank you very much indeed. Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, Commissioner, thank you, sir. Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, appearing here on LBC, where news is next.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain.